1X Developer Podcast.
Welcome to the 1X Developer Podcast, my friends. I am unshaven, disheveled-looking Colin.
Colin with 2 L's.
That's right.
I'm Brendan. Or B.
And today we're going to talk about... What? Oh yeah, you're B today.
I know.
B.
Yeah, what are we talking about today, Colin?
Well, I don't know exactly, but we were discussing sort of this concept of like, okay, so there's kind of like tech fans and tech enthusiasm, and then there's kind of like tech professionals, and they're not necessarily different things. There's overlap, but sometimes there's not.
Yeah.
What do you think? How would you put it?
So I think that the terminology you're using there strikes me as right. Enthusiast versus professional that's kind of the right distinction. A tech enthusiast is someone who's like up on the latest gear. They are kind of like first adopters as far as new technology goes. There's a new kind of TV out that's using new OLED whatever, and they're like first on that train. And then I think there's professional, like tech professionals are more like into computer science, into programming, that kind of thing. And I would include like hardware in there. They're into, making things with hardware. And yeah, I don't think they're mutually exclusive, but I think that a lot of people have an assumption that they are always the same. That I think there's an assumption, especially among like, maybe I'll say, especially among like previous generations, that if you're into computers or anything that's like electronics based, right, that you're into all of these things. And I think that's absolutely not the case. I think this topic kind of came up because you and I both don't really like do a lot with our phones, right? We kind of like, we have cell phones and we use them for texting and stuff, but like you and I both have like older phones that we don't keep up on the latest and greatest phones. And I think a lot of tech professionals are like that.
Yeah. Well, so the weird thing is I think I am a tech enthusiast also. But specifically I'm not with my phone. Like I'm definitely not like a mobile power user. But I would say I am, I've got like I use like weird Linux distros nobody's heard of. And I play video games. That's kind of where my interest in technology started. So I definitely feel like I've got both going on, a tech enthusiast and tech professional.
Tell me more about some of the things that you're an enthusiast about. Like, because I kind of have this feeling that as we talk about this, we're going to realize that, yeah, maybe it's not so black and white and as stark a difference as we think. Maybe it's more of like a spectrum. But like, yeah, what kinds of stuff do you keep up on it? And like when a new thing comes out, you're like right there on it.
Okay, that's a good question because I definitely don't keep up with a lot of stuff. I watch MKBHD on YouTube. He does tech reviews. But yeah, I don't keep up with like whenever I built a gaming PC when I was in high school, but I never really got super into it, and I never really could like name the product lines and stuff. I couldn't tell you like if this one's better than that one or whatever, and I still am not like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm definitely not like super geeky about that stuff. Beyond the fact that I tinker with Linux a little bit and that I play video games, I guess I do keep up with like video game consoles a little bit. I have a vague idea of what's going on there. So maybe not so much.
It's kind of funny. Maybe this is, I'm not even quite sure totally why I say this, but I feel like video games, for some reason, that fits in the tech enthusiast side, and Linux fits in the other side, the tech professional. Like, let me say this too. I feel like tech professional side of things is very much related to, we did an episode a while back, the engineering mindset. I think that the tech professional, the programmers and the hardware tinkerers and that kind of stuff, like, I think that really scratches the itch of the engineering mindset. It's this desire to like take things apart and like really figure out how they work. And like the tech enthusiast seems to me like more interested in like the novelty of new things coming out, and it's like exciting to have a new thing. But I don't often feel like those kind of people really care as much about like getting into the engineering of it and like how does this really work, and I want to take it apart and put it back together and that kind of stuff.
Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah, in that sense, yeah. But okay, so like I did just buy a Robo Vacuum, and I mean I bought it for like practical reasons, right, to vacuum my house. But I do get like, so like on the app, like you can see like there's like a map of your house that the vacuum created,
Mm.
and you can like see like its path as it's going, where it's been, and like where like you can watch it like go around the map of your house. And like I sit there and look at it, and like I get tech enthusiast about it. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's really cool to me from just a consumer perspective. I'm not like a, a robot vacuum fan. I can't tell you like the different models and stuff, but like that'll happen to me. I'll get a new toy and be like, "Ooh yeah, I like this new toy." You know?
Yeah. I've had that too. Someone told me a while back that like they're like, your iPad has LiDAR. Did you know that? And I played around with like mapping 3D spaces with LiDAR, and I was like, whoa, it's kind of awesome.
Yeah. So, hmm. One thing I wanted to think about, or I wanted to talk about, was like, yeah, we had an episode about like developer gatekeeping,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to like get into that a little bit. Like, are we gatekeeping right now? Are we talking about like, is that, are we being snobs right now?
So in thinking about this episode, I'm trying to make a concerted effort really not to be a snob, because I think that the like I don't really identify with the tech enthusiast, but I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I just think not that there's anything wrong. I just think it's not really for me, and I think that like both, both paths are valid, and like we said, a lot of people are in both camps. They're not mutually exclusive, but like somebody has to be the early adopters and somebody has to be excited about like looking at this stuff as it moves forward. I don't I don't see it as snobbish, um, because I don't see it at all as a bad thing. It's just not really for me.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's like, it's important to point out that like there's a lot of things that I don't create or I'm not involved in that I'm still an enthusiast of. Right. Like, I mean, I guess I have made music, and like I like there's a couple instruments I can kind of play, but I would definitely consider myself a music enthusiast, right? Like I have bands that I'm a fan of. There's like uh, stuff that I'm excited about in that regard, but I'm not a creator in that respect.
Hmm.
Or the same would be like the same would go for like movies, right? Like I'm a fan of movies, but I don't make movies.
Yeah. Um, and I think, yeah, I mean, I think that's totally fine. I think there are a lot of really good reasons to be like interested in tech, but not necessarily, yeah, not necessarily want to get into, I don't know, how it was engineered, or we've talked before also about programming is kind of like there's a relationship with math there. Maybe you just don't like that part of it. Maybe you don't really care about like, yeah, the programming side of it and figuring out how things are working in that aspect of it. Yeah, I don't think it's gatekeeping at all. I think it's I hope it doesn't come off to anyone as being snobby, because definitely I don't feel like I'm being a snob about it.
Yeah. So with that out of the way, like I guess what kind of spurred this was like, we were talking about how we are like casual mobile phone users, right? And I get the sense, as you were saying, that like I think a lot of people, maybe people who are tech enthusiasts, or even just people who aren't interested in tech at all, they would think like, oh, you're a programmer. You probably have like the newest phone and you do a lot of tinkering. You like side load apps and you have like weird custom firmware and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I'm not. I'm actually not interested in that stuff at all. Uh, to me, my phone is very much, it's like my robot vacuum, right? It's something that I use to like accomplish things. But I do tinker around with like my PC and with like I have a Raspberry Pi I'll like screw around with and like make stuff with. But yeah, so like that, I guess that's the challenge, right? Is like, is there a misconception about tech professionals as being explicitly tech enthusiasts also?
I absolutely think there is. And I think it comes from, well, my gut instinct is that it comes from like an earlier era where these things were a lot harder to separate, and there was a lot more overlap. Like, I think if you go back to like the 70s or something, it was probably pretty weird to meet, like, just even going back to an earlier division, it was probably pretty weird to meet a programmer who didn't know how to solder, right? It was like,
Yeah.
the idea of messing around with computers meant that you were messing around with the hardware and the software. And then as time goes on, like both of those spaces kind of start to develop independently, and you can totally start to be, you start to have a lot of programmers who don't know about the hardware and are really like removed from the physical aspect of it, and they're just interested in the software. And I think that kind of the same thing has happened with the tech enthusiasts, where there was a point in time where being into computers meant you were kind of like into the whole thing for the most part. Just talking like really broadly, most people were probably interested in new computer stuff that was going on and new programming languages that were coming out and all of it. And nowadays, I think there are people who are just interested in one or the other, or maybe both. But I think you can totally be into one or the other without being into both.
Yeah, so that kind of reminds me of there was like an episode of Jay Leno's Garage where he was saying to someone that like when he was a kid, you worked on your own car, or you knew somebody who worked on cars, because if you didn't, your car didn't run very much. So like people would change their own oil and like knew how to fix stuff on their car, and that's like a completely alien concept, right? People have no idea how to do basic maintenance on their cars today.
Yeah.
And cars were even designed to be, maybe not designed to be, but they're designed in a way where it's like even difficult to do these things, right? The headlight is like a whole like singular piece thing that like you can't just get in there and like change the bulb in it. And it's like the culture around it has changed completely.
If you don't have a diagnostic computer, like I get the impression you
Oh
can't
yeah.
do much on a car at all these days.
Yeah. So I mean, but you do kind of have to be a little bit of a tech enthusiast, right? I mean, the interest comes from somewhere, right? Are you a tech enthusiast in any way?
I mean, I guess if you include like purely software kind of things in there, then sure. Like I keep up to date with, I try to keep up to date with like what JavaScript frameworks are coming out and things like that. So if you include that kind of thing in there, then yes. But I think that the distinction that I'm drawing here is with like consumer electronics, the stuff that like you'd go to Best Buy and buy. You know what I mean? I don't have anything like that. Any kind of like I'm not into drones, and I'm not into digital cameras, and I'm not into those kinds of things that like they all have their own markets and they're all churning constantly. And I'm just like I'm totally unaware of what's going on in those spaces.
I'm the same, and so yeah, in that regard, I'm not much of a tech enthusiast, and I think a lot of it is just the fact that I'm just kind of like cheap, like
Hmm.
because like let's be real, like electronics are just like one of the worst things to spend money on, you know, like one of the dumbest things you can spend money on, and there's always new
Especially
stuff coming
early
out.
unproven stuff.
Yeah, and like everything you get is just, it's gonna there's gonna be a new thing that's better, so it's like it's just I don't want to spend money on junk, But aren't you're a little
Yeah.
bit of like an audio gear guy, aren't you? Just a little bit.
I don't
That's kind of a different
buy.
space,
Yeah,
to be fair.
I wouldn't say I am. I really don't buy a lot of audio gear. I spend a decent amount of time looking at buying audio gear.
Yeah, I can identify with that. Like I said, like I'll watch tech reviews of tech that I won't buy. That's pretty weird.
It's what excites you about watching like reviews of that stuff? Do you watch it and you're like, I might buy that someday?
Man, I don't know. It's just content from my brain. It's just it's just junk to listen to. I guess there's a part of me that thinks that. I guess yeah. Um, I guess it's just interesting to know what's good and like I don't know what's going on.
I mean, I think there is something really interesting about knowing what the new tech is. Like I don't know. I don't have a good example off the top of my head, but I'm thinking about like TVs and stuff. Like if you there's something kind of like fun and interesting about getting into how the panels are lit on, like newer TVs light it this way, and that's why they have better blacks and stuff like that, right? It's like that stuff's kind of interesting to know about, but I never watch that stuff thinking that I'm gonna buy a TV for some reason. I don't know.
Well, like I don't know. I mean, I like when I remember like when the Apple M1 chips came out. That was really interesting to me to see like Apple creating their own processors, and I was interested in how they performed. And it is kind of good to know that. And this is like all based purely on what I've read from other people, but like basically from what I've heard is like really any of the M chips are great, and like I've actually heard that like some of the sales for like the M2 and M3 chips have like not been good because the M1, like, going from like before M1 to M1 is like this huge leap. And then going from like M1 to M2 is like incremental, right? So it's like, I guess knowing things like that is useful if you're at all interested in buying an Apple computer.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's also just interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a really good case. I mean, at the time, I don't know if people would say this today. Maybe they still would, but I think at the time people were seeing the M chip as like one of the big leaps in computing, right? In hardware, that they had really like changed the game with the M chips. That's funny what you were saying. This is an M1 Mac Mini behind me here. It's got that in 2021, and it's still going, still doing great.
So I mean, I do have a framework laptop, and I'm not a like my previous laptop was pretty old. I'm not someone who like gets a new machine all the time, but I feel like a framework laptop is that's a very enthusiast kind of thing to buy.
I agree. It is.
It's a very like it's definitely not like the easy option. It's kind of a risk to take, right? Because a lot of its value so the whole thing with the framework laptop is that it's supposed to be like a customizable laptop where you can buy like the individual components and you can it's like upgradable, and so it's like the idea is that it's kind of battling against like the move for like planned obsolescence and that sort of thing. So like a lot of the purchase is like you're kind of banking on this company still existing for a while, you know.
Hmm.
So that's again, that was a very enthusiast thing for me to do.
You've been happy with it?
Yeah, I've had a great experience with it. Uh, it's yeah, it's a really good machine. There was one time I was trying to buy a component, they were out of stock for a while, which was kind of annoying. Um, but I think that's pretty rare. Seems like they're mostly in stock on the stuff now.
Yeah, framework's kind of an interesting one because I would consider that like an enthusiast kind of thing because you're right. It's not, yeah, it's not one of like the popular mainstream options. You really got to like dig a little deeper to get into that. It's kind of funny because I could see like different cross sections of people being into it. I could see people being into framework for the tech side of it, the kind of like modularity of it, the exact opposite of the right the M chips that are like all system on a chip. Um, but also I could see people being into framework for like environmental reasons, and that kind of stuff, even if they don't particularly care about the tech. Um, if they maybe somebody just heard like, yeah, you know, every laptop you buy ends up in a landfill every 3 years or whatever. Um, you should check this guy out, and you can just replace parts as needed.
Yeah, yeah. It was both for me. I mean, the main thing for me was my. So I'm pretty firmly a laptop guy at this point. You know, I I don't have anything against desktops, but it's just nice to have the portability. You know, and the world of gaming laptops is kind of a weird. You know, it's almost like an oxymoron in a way. You know, gaming laptop like high performance, but also portable.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and basically, I mean, my old laptop, like the graphics card was just too old to like play newer games, and I was like, dude, I wish I could like just upgrade the graphics card like on a desktop, and framework you can do that. So like, just made sense for me.
Yeah, that's a good example. That's yeah, tech enthusiast about laptops. Put you in that category. So where are you at on Linux distributions these days? Do you try a lot of different distributions?
I really don't. I mean, I guess what really spurred it was when I bought my framework. I was like, okay, what am I going to run on this? And I did try a few different things, and I explored a little bit. I'm not like one of those crazy people who like is running into distro every month. I eventually settled on Endeavor OS, and I've been running that uh, for like a year. I think it's been going really good for me. Um, so yeah, I guess I don't really tinker around with it that much. I am a KDE guy,
Hmm.
which is super customizable. Uh, and we had our browser episode. I talked about how I like Vivaldi a lot. You know, it's a that's a very enthusiast product, right? Like the way it's configurable and stuff, but not
Yeah.
that's not consumer electronics, but it's still kind of it's definitely like a geeky thing to use, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know. Now that you're talking about that, about like customizable desktop environment, customizable browser, like I wonder what the difference is between that and people who are into like consumer electronics. So that kind of tech enthusiast, because I would almost think that that scratches the same itch, right? Maybe it's just the price. Maybe people are really just put off by like that some people are not into the consumer stuff because it is expensive and customizing your desktop is free.
Yeah. Well, so I was going into this thinking, there's kind of like people who want to tinker with stuff, and then people who want things to just work out of the box. And I'm kind of like both, depending on what we're talking about, right?
Okay.
And what mood I'm in. I'm kind of weird too. Okay, so like I use NeoVim as like my main editor now, and I use like an a NeoVim config called NVChad, which is like, I feel like a lot of people would be like, dude, what are you doing? Because it's like NeoVim is this like super configurable thing, and then NVChad is like, okay, yeah, it has everything configured for you out of the box. And I feel like that's a very weird kind of, again, oxymoronic thing, but like that's kind of where I like to be, I think, because that's kind of what Endeavor OS is too, right? It's based on Arch, but
Mhm.
it's like, it's the selling point is that it's like Arch Linux, but like without all the bull crap. So it's like I guess I'm this like weird guy who like I kind of want, like, I want to have my cake and eat it too, right? I want to have all that configurability, but I also like want it to work immediately.
Yeah. Um, I've installed Arch. I've run it, and like I totally get why you would use a distribution that kind of does some of the upfront work for you. It was hard getting it up and running.
When was that you did that?
2010, 2011.
I've heard it's a lot better now. I've never actually done it. I just went straight to Endeavor, but I have heard that like getting Arch installed and set up is like not like what it used to be. But I don't know.
Maybe I'll give it another shot. I'll say that I was going to ask you when you were talking about side loading on your phone and stuff like that. Were you ever into that? Were you ever into like loading, I don't know,
Oh, okay,
alternative
yeah.
OSs on your phone and stuff?
So my first smartphone was a Samsung Galaxy S2, and I was like really into the Android thing. That it was my first smartphone, and I was really into like, okay, this is gonna be like I did try to like flash some custom firmware on there. I didn't know anything about what I was doing or even why you would do that. It was just like I had heard that this was like a cool thing that you can do,
Hmm.
and I don't know. I tried to get into it, and like I don't know. It wasn't really for me. I did like install apps that like weren't on the App Store once or twice, I think, or the Google Play Store, or whatever. And I remember I was very much like, yeah, dude, this thing is an iPhone but better because it's like you can do all this other stuff. And then eventually I moved. I got an iPhone, and it's like the operating system to me is just a lot cleaner and easier to use. And yeah, I gave up on like, when I made that move, I couldn't like use FLAC files. Like I couldn't open that. That was like a big issue at the time. It was like iOS didn't support FLAC files, and I couldn't install apps that weren't on the App Store. But you actually don't do any of those things really. Like those things actually don't matter at all. You're just going to use your music streaming service, and the App Store has everything you need. Uh, so I feel like that was a big moment for me, like moving to iOS and realizing like, yeah, you don't need any of this crap. I don't know. Maybe that moment will happen to me for browsers and stuff too, but it hasn't yet.
I don't remember having a moment like that, but I definitely came to a similar conclusion. Yeah, like I have a very similar story. I started out on Android, and I was convinced at the time that, yeah, that like the customizability that iOS was just way too locked down, that I wanted to do things with my phone that Apple wouldn't allow you to do. And yeah, like at some point after a few years, it was just like, I don't actually do any of that stuff. Like, I don't. I just haven't found myself side loading. I haven't found myself messing around with any of this stuff. I just don't. I'm not interested enough in my phone to do that stuff. And, sadly, I've kind of come to the same conclusion with like Linux distros and desktop environments and that kind of stuff is just I don't find I don't find myself like messing around customizing that stuff as much these days. And it really bugs the shit out of me when my computer doesn't work. Like
Yeah.
when
When
I
it doesn't work and you're really trying to get something done.
yeah. I just feel like I don't know. The older I get, time is tighter. My attention span is worse. I the hours in the day are precious, and I just get really really frustrated like when my computer is not in a working state, and um, just I found that way too many times with Linux to where it was like and to be totally clear, like I would go back to Linux in a second. Like I really try to ever since I moved to Mac, I've really tried to make an effort to like make sure that all the stuff I'm using is cross-platform, and I don't really want to be tied to like any operating system. Um, so I would move back to Linux if there was like a really really good option. Maybe I'll give Endeavor OS a try, but um, I just don't want to be futzing around with something and like my computer not working. That for some reason that just drives me crazy.
Okay, so let me actually tell my story because this is a good segue. Like, okay, so I was an Android guy for a while, and I had a Google, or maybe it wasn't Google. It was the Nexus 5X. It was like kind of the precursor to the Google Pixel,
Hmm.
and so it was like stock Android, super like uh, no bloat uh, Android version, whatever. I had this Nexus 5X. This was when I was working with you actually, and it bricked. Like it literally, I was at work, I picked it up off my desk, and it was not. I hit the like it would not awaken. It would not. I couldn't turn it off or on. It was just dead. I plugged it in, and it would do nothing. Um, I remember looking this up, and like this wasn't a thing really that other people were having. I don't know what the hell happened to the thing. If it was freaking like a solar flare, like I don't know.
Hmm.
But literally, I just picked it up and just wasn't working. And I was traveling like the next day or like the day after that, I think. So I like really needed to get my phone working, right? And I used my girlfriend's phone to call like okay, so the weird thing with the Nexus 5X was that some of them had been manufactured by LG and some of them had been manufactured by a different company. I think like HTC or something.
Hmm.
And so I called like LG support and like I think they had me call the other one and then neither one could help me. They kept like, I was on the phone support and they're like, well, when you start it up, does it do this? And I'm like, it doesn't turn on. Like, I was having that stuff where it's like, dude, no, listen to what I'm saying. So I went through this whole thing and then I just decided to buy an iPhone, right? Because then it's like, there's one iPhone that's produced by one company, right? And it's like, and they really don't brick. Like the quality control is pretty good on iPhones. That's not to say that they don't have issues; they do. But like, if you do have an issue with your iPhone, you can just Google it because they're like tons of people have them, and like everything that's to be known about them is known. So that was kind of like when I was like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna get an iPhone. And then I later found that yeah, I didn't miss any of the Android stuff. Um, and let me also say this is not like me hating on Android or anything like that. It's like Android and iOS are like basically, in my experience, they were basically the same thing, like just with different skins. It was more just the hardware situation and just the peace of mind. Like people always say, like, oh, when you buy an iPhone, you're paying for the Apple logo, and it's like, yeah, but like I feel that that logo does have some meaning, right? In the sense that I can go to any store that has that logo, and like they can help me and like know what the hell's going on, right?
Right.
Uh, so that's kind of my tangent on that. But that's pretty much exactly what you're talking about, right? Like you need your things to work, right? And so I do have a little bit of a story here also with browsers. Um, there was and this was documented. There was like news, like some articles about this and stuff. There was an update that went out to Firefox on the Windows version specifically, I think, that made it completely not work, where Firefox could not be opened. And I actually ran into this naturally. Like I sat down my Windows computer, tried to open Firefox, it just didn't open. And that to me was the moment where I was like, yeah, I'm not using this browser anymore, because there's like one thing that I really need my browser to be able to do, and that's open, right? And
Yeah.
like out of all the features there are, I really needed to be able to like double click the icon and like type in a web address and see the content, right? Like, so that was kind of the moment where I was like, yeah, I'm kind of done with Firefox. Maybe that's a little too strict, but like one time was too many for me with that.
Yeah.
Um, one other thing I wanted to talk about. So the other thing is like, so yeah, on Linux you do have a lot of issues, and you do tinker with things, and you do screw with a lot of stuff. The thing is, it's free. That's like a big part of why I use Linux, because it's free.
Yep.
And I've also found that, well, so I've mentioned I'm a gamer, right? So Windows is kind of like the gaming PC platform, right?
Right.
That's where all the games are going to run natively. But for me, like as a Windows user, a long time Windows user, I kept finding that it was not the easy choice. Like I kept like as time has gone on, like they introduced ads in the start menu, and then like they've they've done all kinds of like weird UI stuff. It seems like the search is like terrible. Like when I use a Windows machine now, I'm like, dude, this thing is god awful. Like, how is this the premium one, and the free one I have at home is the one that like is good and works?
Yeah.
Um, that's not to say anything about Macs. I guess the only reason I really don't have a Mac is because they're expensive. Um, but yeah, so that's my thing. Like, I do use all these tinkery kind of nerdy tools, but like at the same time, they're kind of the reliable ones. I feel like I do value reliability heavily.
That's interesting. Yeah. I kind of wonder. Let me ask you this: in your experience with Linux, um, do you find that I don't know? Do you find that you have issues these days when you're not messing with stuff, like in the regular course of just like using your computer and updating things? If you're not screwing around with and tinkering, do you ever find that you run into issues, or do things run pretty smoothly?
Yeah, I do have weird issues.
Hmm.
The thing is, I don't know if I have more weird issues than I had on Windows.
Yeah.
Like, I have, specifically, I have a lot of audio issues and a lot of Bluetooth issues. But that's like every computer, basically. Like,
Yeah.
I've yet to really have a system where that just always works. Um, getting on a voice call on Discord is always a challenge. Like, someone's always having audio issues. I don't know. Half the time when we try to record this, I'm having some issue. I don't know how much of that is Linux or whatever. I have updated stuff and stuff is broken. Yeah. Uh, but I was constantly cussing at Windows too. I guess Mac is probably the one where I have situations like that the least. But I've never had a Mac as a personal computer either. I've always just had it as a work machine where I'm not really doing a lot of crazy stuff.
Yeah. Because those are the ones that drive me a little batty. Is like, I don't know. I feel like if you get into the tinkering, then you're kind of like then you're kind of in for it, right? Like you if you're in there kind of like messing around with stuff, there's always the possibility that you're going to break something. But my experience with Linux, it's been at least 5 years since I had a Linux machine. But my experience back then was like just in the in normal course of like running updates and stuff, things would break, and it was like, oh yeah, you got to edit your app to get file or whatever, and like that stuff's really annoying to me. Or like, you know, picking up your phone and just having it bricked is when you're not messing around with stuff and things go wrong is really, really frustrating. Like,
Yeah.
I just want things to work.
So I know that like with the Linux situation, like a lot of it has to do with your hardware. I know that like NVIDIA people have a lot more issues than AMD people. And like framework is kind of like, it's like one of the selling points is that it's like super Linux friendly, right? It's all AMD stuff.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of why I've had a good experience. And it depends on like your distro and stuff too. I haven't really messed with NixOS, but I know that that's supposed to be like one of the selling points of NixOS is that it's like always easy to get back to a working state if you break things.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's been headway there with like immutable distros and all this stuff. I haven't messed with any of that stuff, but maybe I should.
That's kind of where I was going with that. Was like I get the impression, I haven't tried it myself, but I get the impression that Linux is much more reliable than it used to be. There was always this joke for so many years about, year of the desktop, year of the Linux desktop.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know, maybe especially with Windows declining in quality, and Mac, I think a lot of people would argue Mac OS has also declined in quality, and Linux improving in quality. Maybe they're close to being on par these days.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just you can't beat free, like
Can't be free.
you can't be mad. You can't be that mad at an operating system that's free, if it doesn't work right. I get very mad at Windows for not working right when it's cost money.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I mean, that's supposed to be part of what you're paying for. Yeah.
Well, do you have anything else to say about tech enthusiasm versus tech professionalism?
I still want to buy a drone. I'd like to own a
Yeah,
drone.
I never got into the drone thing, but they do look fun.
They look pretty cool, but here's the thing: is like I don't want to just like fly it up one time and like take a picture of my roof and then bring it back down. I want to learn to like race drones. How do you do that? How do you
Okay.
learn? How do you learn to like
Yeah, that would be
slaloms and
fun.
stuff?
Yeah, in my experience, I think most people they buy a cheap drone, they fly it like a couple times, and that's it.
Yeah. That's my experience too. And this is one of the reasons why I feel like the tech enthusiasm stuff is not for me. It's just like, I just don't, I feel like that would be me. I'd buy a new piece of gear and be like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
Then it goes in the closet and I never use it again.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. What's something so you would be into drones? I'm trying to think like what would if I had to tech enthusiase one time. I do want to get into VR stuff. I think VR is cool.
Mm,
I thought about that.
that would be cool. I remain a little surprised that there's not more going on there with like, I don't know. I'm surprised the Apple one hasn't taken off. I'm surprised that we don't. Like the metaverse is like on its way out.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
weird. I don't know
And
what's
I
going
think
on
that's
there.
why I've never really bit the bullet and got into it is because it's like there's like a couple of games people say are really great, like Beat Saber, and I know there's like Skyrim VR, and there's like a Resident Evil VR game that people like. Oh, there's a Half-Life one. But it's like, okay, so I play those, and then what? I don't know.
Yeah, that would be cool. If you get a VR headset, invite me over.
Yeah, it'd be fun. Okay, So then, whose side are you on, dude? The whose side are you on list is getting slim.
Oh, we have solved all of the controversial issues.
Yeah, it's over. Yeah, bye bye. Yeah, guys, it's all over. We have one political party, one religion. It's all figured out. It's the One X Developer Podcast.
Now the plan is revealed.
Okay, so okay, this is like a goofy one. You want to do a goofy one?
Sure.
All right,
Always.
so this isn't really whose side are you on. It's more just like a random question I came up with. Wait, um, what is the most American programming language?
Most American. Um,
And you can take that in any direction you want. Like you know, whatever aspect of Americanism you want to, you know, go in. I feel like when I wrote this down, I feel like I had an answer in my head, and I can't really think about what it was.
yeah, I was kind of
I
curious what prompted this.
Okay, so part of me wants to say C sharp because of its like it's such an like or Java, either one. The way that it's just so like industrial, like uh, it's so focused on like we're making products. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Also,
You
the
think
language doesn't have to be American made, obviously, but just like the air around it, like the vibe of it.
yeah. I feel like it's something like JavaScript that where there's no rules. You don't tell me what to do.
Oh
The
yeah,
rugged
okay,
individualism of America. I think yeah,
yeah,
you just you don't tell me what type this variable is. I tell
yeah, yeah.
you how I'm going to use this.
Right, right. See, I was talking about some strongly typed languages. Like I feel like an American language would be very, very loose with types.
Yeah. I think in American language, yeah, there's not a lot of rules. We don't have like documentation on how to do this. We just have like some,
Yeah,
there's some loose guidelines, but you can kind of do whatever you want.
and JavaScript is also good in the sense that it's just this like inescapable thing. Like it doesn't matter where you in the world you go to. There's a Starbucks, there's a McDonald's, there's JavaScript. You know what I mean? Like you cannot you cannot escape.
That's very true. Yeah. I think I'm trying to think of something even like looser than JavaScript. I don't know.
Right.
There's got to be something out there, but like,
Yeah. Well, I, for a second there, I was thinking like, okay, so does that make something like Rust like the least American, right? Where it's like there's these really, really hard, fast rules.
yeah, I think so. I think something that has like rigid, prescribed ways of doing things is un-American. That's something else entirely.
Yeah. Um. Yeah, I'm thinking about that a little bit more. So then, I mean, in that sense, then I mean, like, C is pretty American, right? The way that all the foot guns are there, you can just, you're free to just, you have the freedom for all of its strengths and weaknesses. You have the freedom to just do whatever you want, memory wise.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I think there's an argument there. Like, why isn't everything just a void pointer and just like you just put whatever you want in RAM?
Yeah, dude. You can do that.
If you want to do it, you can do it.
Yeah.
There's no rules. Yeah. I'm really curious, like what you were thinking when you wrote that question. I
Okay,
wish
let me. Okay, I'm pretty sure. I put this question into Claude just to see what it would say. Let me see if I can find the chat. Yes, most American programming language. Okay, so it gave me an answer, and then I said, "What are the?" Okay, yeah, here we go. Here. It gave me an answer, and then I said, "Rank 10 languages on Americanness." So it said number one, C, the foundation of American computing infrastructure. That's not really what I'm asking, right? That's not really what that's not the spirit of the question. Number
Yeah.
two, JavaScript powers the web, peak Silicon Valley innovation. I feel like that makes sense.
Fair.
Number three, COBOL ran American business and government. You see, it's not really understanding the spirit of the question here, right? I'm not talking about like what powers American companies. I'm talking about what's like has the American ideals.
That feels like it interpreted as what were some languages that were important to American programming or something like that.
Okay, here. Okay, so it actually gave me. This is weird. Anyway, it said for Java, the write once, run anywhere is a very American corporate ambition idea, which makes sense. Okay. I also asked it what are the 10 least American languages. So let's look at the number one is Pascal. So it's methodical, structured, very European academic approach.
Is it?
I don't know. I don't really know anything about Pascal.
I wrote Pascal in my high school computer science course. I don't remember. I guess I don't know. I don't remember enough about it to say what the approach was philosophically, but I almost feel like the AI is just picking up on the French name.
Okay, well, number two was Haskell and Haskell. Sorry, why did I say it like that? It says developed primarily in UK universities. It says pure functional programming feels very non-American. I'm not really sure what it means by that.
Too many non-American vibes.
I feel like functional programming can be American. I don't know. Anyway, I think JavaScript is a really good answer.
That's my feeling. Like I said, I was kind of looking for something even looser, but yeah, I think it's something loosey-goosey like JavaScript, something where it's just the Wild West, and we just kind of like, if anything works, it's a friggin' miracle.
Nice. All right, that was a fun one. Well, there you have it.
This has been the 1X Developer Podcast.
See you in the next one.
Peace.
1X Developer Podcast.
Hey everybody, this is Colin. First and foremost, I want to thank you all for listening to this episode of the 1X Developer Podcast, and let you know that if you have any questions, comments, or if you just want to tell us about your day, you can reach us at X, formerly known as Twitter, at 1X Developer Podcast. We're also on YouTube at 1X Developer Podcast. You can email us if you're weird at 1xdeveloperpodcast at protonmail.com. And lastly, don't forget to follow, subscribe, all that stuff, so you don't miss any further episodes of the 1X Developer Podcast. Thanks so much. See you next time.